who is called barren, is the mother of the angels, and the companion of the Savior is Mary Magdalene. The Savior loved her more than all the disciples, and used to kiss her often on her mouth. That kind of statement was theological dynamite. A woman as Christ's spiritual companion on equal footing with the apostles? Unacceptable. So the text was buried, literally, for 1600 years, until Nag Hammadi. In subsequent centuries, the censorship continued. The Council of Trent, between 1545 and 1563, reaffirmed the closed scriptural canon. Any text outside that canon was heretical by definition. And with that came consolidation of Marian devotion, but always within limits. Mary could be venerated, not worshipped. She could intercede, not decide. She could be queen, not ruler. The Protestant Reformation attempted to discard even Mary, reducing feminine divinity to virtually nothing. Luther and Calvin rejected Marian veneration as idolatry. The result was even more masculinized theology, where not even Sophia's shadow remained. The sacred feminine was completely expelled from mainstream Protestantism. But the question persists: why? Why such fear of a feminine divine figure? Why such effort to erase Sophia and domesticate Mary? The evidence points to a simple, brutal answer: control. A hierarchical, patriarchal church couldn't function if half of divinity was feminine and autonomous. It couldn't function if women could be spiritual teachers with inherent authority. It couldn't function if salvation came through gnosis, interior knowledge, instead of through sacraments controlled by bishops. The historical record shows deliberate, coordinated suppression, imperial edicts against heresy, military force used to close Gnostic churches, execution of teachers who refused to recant. This wasn't theological debate. This was ideological warfare backed by state power. So Sophia was erased. Mary was positioned in her place. And most people never knew it happened. But now you do. And in the final episode, we'll examine what this means for you today, in the 21st century, why this truth matters, and what implications it carries for how we understand spirituality, gender, and power. The investigation concludes with the question that started it: what happens when you recover what was deliberately hidden? What changes when you see the full picture, instead of the edited version? That's what we're exploring next. The truth, and what it demands of us. You've followed the evidence through 5 episodes. That means something in you recognized the pattern, the discrepancies, the deliberate erasure. Now comes the critical question. What does this investigation mean? Why does it matter today, 2,000 years after these events? The answer is both straightforward and profound, because the suppression of Sophia wasn't just the suppression of a theological figure. It was the suppression of half the human experience of the divine. It was a declaration that femininity is only acceptable when it's subordinate, silent, controlled. And that mindset didn't stay confined to the 4th or 5th century. It shaped Western civilization for millennia. Consider the historical consequences. For how long were women barred from teaching religion? For how long were they prohibited from interpreting sacred texts? For how long were their mystical experiences invalidated or attributed to hysteria? That's not accident, it's direct consequence of erasing Sophia. When you remove feminine divinity from cosmology, you remove the theological foundation for feminine spiritual authority. That's exactly what the institutional church accomplished. But something significant is happening now. Since the Nag Hammadi discovery, since those texts were translated and made accessible, a wave of reconnection with sacred femininity has been growing. We're not discussing superficial New Age spirituality. We're discussing serious scholars, researchers, spiritual seekers who are rediscovering Sophia and recognizing that something essential was stolen from Western spirituality. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, spent years studying Gnostic texts and recognized something crucial. Sophia represents the anima archetype, the feminine face of the human psyche that was repressed by patriarchal civilization. He wrote in answer to Job that the 1950 declaration of the Assumption of Mary dogma was an unconscious attempt by the Church to restore feminine divinity, but Jung understood it wasn't sufficient. Mary was the domesticated version. Sophia was the complete truth. And here's what might challenge some assumptions. You don't need to stop venerating Mary to recognize Sophia. It's not about replacing one with the other. it's about restoring what was lost. Mary can remain the loving mother, the compassionate intercessor. But Sophia needs recognition as creative wisdom, transformative force, the feminine divine principle in its totality. The Gospel of Thomas records Jesus saying, "When you make the two into one, and when you make the inner like the outer, and the outer like the inner, and the upper like the lower, and when you make male and female into a single one, then you will enter the kingdom." That union of opposites, that sacred marriage between masculine and feminine divine, is what Orthodox Christianity destroyed. And it's what needs restoration. So what can you do? First, continue investigating. Read the Pistis Sophia. Read the Gospel of Mary. Read Thunder, Perfect Mind. Examine with your own eyes what was hidden from you. Second, question the narratives you were taught. Ask, why can only men be priests? Why do only masculine voices have theological authority? Why is the divine always Father, never Mother, never Sophia? Third, reconnect with sacred femininity in your own spiritual life. This doesn't require complex rituals or secret initiations. It can be simply recognizing that wisdom, intuition, creativity, profound compassion you experience aren't merely human emotions. They're reflections of feminine divinity that was always here, even when they tried to erase its name. The historical evidence indicates Sophia never died. She was buried, not destroyed. Every time you seek genuine wisdom, every time you question imposed dogmas, every time you honor interior intuition over external authorities, you're touching Sophia. Every time a woman teaches spiritual truths, leads religious communities, interprets sacred texts, Sophia is resurfacing. And Mary? Mary remains powerful in her own way. But imagine what it would mean if we could honor both. If we could have Mary's compassion and Sophia's creative power. If we could have Mary's conscious submission and Sophia's radical autonomy. That would be complete Christianity. That would be the sacred restored. The institutional church attempted to erase Sophia because they feared loss of control. They feared people would discover that divinity doesn't require masculine intermediaries. They feared that gnosis, direct knowledge of the divine, would render bishops obsolete. For centuries, they succeeded. But not anymore. You now carry this knowledge. What you do with it is your choice. But understand that knowledge brings responsibility. You cannot unknow what you now know. And if these 5 episodes resonated with you, if something stirred deeply, then share this investigation. Subscribe to Omniscient, because this isn't just my investigation, it's ours. And the historical record is calling for re-examination. The evidence speaks clearly once you look at it without institutional filters. Sophia was real, she was venerated, she was systematically replaced, and that replacement had profound consequences for how we understand gender, power, and spirituality. Truth doesn't require your belief. It simply requires examination. And once examined, it demands response. The question isn't whether this happened. The records prove it did. The question is, what you'll do now that you know. The investigation continues. Because history isn't finished revealing its secrets. And neither are we finished asking questions.